I knew he was going to die 3 weeks before it happened. Not because someone told me, not because I overheard a conversation I shouldn't have, but because of the way he looked at me across the dinner table that Sunday night in February. My husband, Vincent Russo, the man they called Vinny Ice in every social club from Mulberry Street to Sheepshead Bay, looked at me with eyes that had already accepted his fate. And in that moment, I understood that I was the reason. I was the crack in his armor. I was the weakness they had been waiting for. My name is Angela Russo, and this is the story of how I destroyed the man I loved by trying to save him. They say the Mafia takes care of its own, that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water. But nobody tells you that blood also stains. Nobody tells you that family can be a prison with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Nobody tells you that love, real love, the kind that makes your heart race when he walks through the door at 3 in the morning smelling like cigars and expensive cologne. That kind of love can be the most dangerous weapon of all. I learned that lesson slowly, painfully, over 7 years of marriage to a man who controlled half of Brooklyn but couldn't control his own paranoia. 7 years of sleeping next to someone who kept a loaded gun in the nightstand drawer. 7 years of pretending I didn't notice the blood on his shirt collars, the bruised knuckles, the phone calls he took in the bathroom at midnight. 7 years of being Mrs. Vincent Russo, the wife of a boss. The woman who smiled at christenings and wore black at funerals and never, ever asked questions. Vincent and I met in the summer of 2008 at my cousin Maria's wedding in Bensonhurst. I was 23 years old, working as a paralegal at a law firm in Manhattan, living in a tiny apartment in Astoria with 2 roommates, trying to pay off my student loans and pretend that my life had meaning. He was 36, already a captain in the Colombo family, already wealthy beyond anything I could imagine. Already marked by violence in ways I was too naive to recognize. He sent a bottle of champagne to my table, not through a waiter, through one of his guys, a man with shoulders like a refrigerator who leaned down and said, "Mr. Russo would like you to have this, and he'd like to know if you'd do him the honor of a dance." I remember laughing, thinking it was old-fashioned and ridiculous and kind of romantic. I remember my aunt grabbing my wrist under the table and whispering, "Angela, be careful. You know who he is, right?" I didn't, not really. I knew he was connected, I knew he had money, I knew my father would disapprove. That made him more interesting. We danced to "The Way You Look Tonight," and he held me like I was made of glass. His hands were gentle, his voice was soft, and when he asked if he could take me to dinner the following week, I said yes without thinking about consequences. That's the thing about falling in love with a gangster, you don't see the danger until you're already in too deep. You see the charm first, the confidence, the way he tips $100 for a $20 meal. The way he opens doors and pulls out chairs and makes you feel like you're the only woman in the world. Vincent was good at that. Making you feel special, making you feel chosen. I didn't know then that being chosen also meant being owned. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Dinners at restaurants where the maitre d' knew his name, weekends in the Hamptons, jewelry that appeared in blue Tiffany boxes on my pillow. He never talked about his work, never brought that world into our dates, never made me feel afraid. When I asked him what he did for a living, he said he was in construction and waste management, that he had investments in several businesses, that he'd worked hard his whole life to build something. It wasn't exactly a lie. It just wasn't exactly the truth either. My father, who drove a truck for the sanitation department for 30 years and never took a dime that wasn't his, saw through it immediately. "Angela," he said the first time Vincent came to pick me up at my parents' house in Bay Ridge, "that man is trouble. That man is gonna break your heart or get you killed or both." I told him he was being dramatic. I told him Vincent was a gentleman. I told him to mind his own business. I was young and stupid and in love, and I thought my father was old and paranoid and didn't understand that the world had changed. Vincent proposed to me on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, 6 months after we met. He got down on one knee right there on the pedestrian walkway with tourists taking pictures and joggers running past, and he opened a box with a diamond so big I actually gasped. "Angela," he said, and his voice cracked a little, which made it feel real. "I know I'm not perfect. I know I come from a world that's hard to understand. But I swear to God, I will spend every day of my life making you happy. I will protect you. I will take care of you. You will never want for anything. Just say yes. Please, just say yes." I said yes because I loved him. I said yes because the ring was beautiful. I said yes because every girl wants to feel like a princess, even if the prince is wearing a gun under his suit jacket. We got married in the spring of 2009 at Our Lady of Guadalupe in Diker Heights, a church so full of flowers it looked like a funeral. 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met. Men in expensive suits with expensive watches and dead eyes. Women with surgery-enhanced faces and fur coats and smiles that never reached their eyes. My family sat on one side looking uncomfortable and out of place. Vincent's family, his real family, the kind bound by secrets and money and fear, sat on the other side looking like they owned the place. Because they did. They owned the church, the catering hall, the priest, the florist, probably half the police department that provided security outside. My father cried during the ceremony. Not happy tears. He knew I was walking into a cage, even if the cage was gilded. The first year of marriage was like living in a dream. We moved into a brownstone in Carroll Gardens, a 4-story house with a private garden and original crown molding and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Vincent hired an interior decorator, told her to give me whatever I wanted, and then handed me a credit card with no limit. I quit my job at the law firm because he said his wife didn't need to work, that it was his job to provide, that he wanted me to be comfortable and happy and free to do whatever I wanted. What I wanted, I discovered, was to fill the emptiness. I took cooking classes. I joined a book club. I volunteered at a local elementary school. I planted roses in the garden and learned to make pasta from scratch and hosted dinner parties for Vincent's associates and their wives. I played the role of the perfect mob wife, and I played it well. But the cracks started to show. Little things at first. The way Vincent's phone would ring at 2 in the morning, and he'd take the call in the hallway, his voice low and tense. The way men would show up at our house at strange hours, sitting in the kitchen drinking espresso and speaking in Italian too fast for me to follow. The way Vincent would disappear for days sometimes, leaving me alone in that big house with nothing but my thoughts and the growing realization that I had no idea who my husband really was. When I asked where he'd been, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Business, baby. Just business. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. I worried about the rumors I heard at the hair salon. The whispers at church, the way other women looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear. The violence came into our lives slowly, like water seeping through a crack in the foundation. First it was just stories, things that happened to other people. A restaurant owner who refused to pay protection money and ended up in the hospital with 2 broken legs. A union boss who testified to a grand jury and then disappeared. A rival crew that tried to move into Vincent's territory and ended up at the bottom of the Gowanus Canal. Vincent never confirmed anything, never denied anything, just changed the subject when I brought it up. But I saw it in his eyes. The darkness, the capacity for violence, the part of him that could hurt people and sleep like a baby afterward. Then one night in October 2010, the violence came home. I was in the kitchen making dinner, chicken marsala, Vincent's favorite, when I heard shouting in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Vincent and 3 of his guys dragging a man out of a car. The man was bleeding from his mouth, his hands tied behind his back, his face twisted in terror. They brought him into the basement. I heard the door slam. I heard the man screaming. I stood there at the stove with a wooden spoon in my hand, listening to the sounds of a beating, listening to a man begging for his life, and I did nothing. I just stood there. When Vincent came upstairs 20 minutes later, his knuckles were bloody. He washed his hands in the kitchen sink like he was washing off dirt from gardening. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He dried his hands on a dish towel and smiled at me. "Don't worry about it, Ang. Just a disagreement. It's handled." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call the police. But I didn't, because by then I understood the rules. The first rule of being a mob wife is you don't ask questions. The second rule is you don't see anything. The third rule is you never, ever tell. I tried to leave once, in the winter of 2011. I packed a bag while Vincent was out, called my sister in New Jersey, and asked if I could stay with her for a while. She said yes, but I could hear the fear in her voice. She knew what leaving Vincent meant. I made it as far as the front door before I realized I couldn't do it. Not because I didn't want to leave, but because I understood that leaving Vincent wasn't like leaving a normal husband. You don't divorce a mafia boss. You don't just walk away. Women who tried ended up isolated, broke, or dead. Vincent's mother had warned me once over coffee, her voice sweet but her message clear. Once your family, Angela, your family forever. There's no going back to your old life. This is your life now. I unpacked my bag and cried in the bathtub until the water went cold. The FBI came into our lives in the spring of 2012. Not dramatically, not with badges and guns and warrants, but quietly. Like a slow-acting poison. It started with cars parked on our street that didn't belong to our neighbors. Men in suits pretending to read newspapers. Vans with tinted windows. Vincent noticed first, of course. He'd spent his whole life looking over his shoulder. We're being watched, he told me one morning over breakfast, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. Don't talk about anything important in the house. Don't use your cell phone for anything that matters. And if anyone approaches you, anyone at all, you tell them to talk to my lawyer and then you call me immediately. I nodded, feeling the walls closing in. They approached me on a Tuesday afternoon in June while I was shopping at the farmers market in Union Square. Two agents, a man and a woman, both in their 30s, both trying to look friendly and non-threatening. The woman smiled at me. Mrs. Russo? Angela Russo? I remember my hands going cold. I'm Special Agent Patricia Morrison. This is Special Agent David Chen. We're with the FBI. We'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. Just informally, nothing official. I looked around, wondering if Vincent had someone following me, wondering if this was a test. I don't have anything to say to you. If you want to talk to me, call my husband's attorney. I started to walk away. Agent Morrison followed. Angela, please. We're not trying to get you in trouble. We're trying to help you. We know what kind of man Vincent is. We know what he does. We know you're not involved. We just want to talk. I kept walking. We know you're afraid, she called after me. We know you feel trapped. But it doesn't have to be this way. You have options. You have a choice. I didn't turn around. I got in my car and drove home and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, shaking, before I went inside. I didn't tell Vincent about the FBI approaching me. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry him, but the truth was more complicated. Part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, was curious about what they wanted, curious about those options Agent Morrison mentioned. Curious about what my life might look like if I wasn't married to Vincent Russo. That curiosity was dangerous. That curiosity was a betrayal. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The wiretaps started around the same time. Vincent's lawyer, Tommy Galante, a man who'd defended half the wise guys in New York, came to the house one evening and swept it for bugs. He found 3, one in the kitchen phone, one in the bedroom, one in Vincent's office. Vincent's face went white when Tommy showed him the devices, little black boxes no bigger than a quarter. How long? Vincent asked. Tommy shrugged. Could be weeks, could be months, hard to say, but they've heard everything, Vin. Every conversation, every phone call, everything. I watched Vincent's jaw clench, watched him process the violation, watched him calculate the damage. What do we do? I asked. Vincent looked at me like he'd forgotten I was in the room. We don't talk about anything in the house anymore. We don't use the phones. We go outside if we need to have a real conversation. And we assume we're always being watched. Always. Living under surveillance changes you. It makes you paranoid. It makes you second guess every word, every gesture, every conversation. I started writing notes instead of speaking, burning them in the fireplace afterward. Vincent and I would go for walks in the neighborhood, talking in whispers about nothing important. Both of us scanning for agents, for cameras, for anyone who might be listening. Our intimacy died, not just physical intimacy, though that suffered too, but emotional intimacy. We couldn't be honest with each other when we knew the FBI was listening. We couldn't fight, couldn't laugh, couldn't be human. We became performers in our own lives, acting out the roles of husband and wife for an invisible audience. The family dinners were the worst. Every Sunday, without fail, we'd go to Vincent's mother's house in Bensonhurst. A sprawling Victorian that had been in the Russo family for 3 generations. The whole crew would be there. Vincent's brothers, his cousins, his uncles, all the made men and associates, their wives and girlfriends and children. 30, 40 people crammed into one house, eating and drinking and laughing while the men talked business in the backyard and the women cleaned up in the kitchen. On the surface, it looked like a normal Italian family gathering. But underneath, there was always tension, always politics, always the unspoken knowledge that any one of these men could be an informant, could be wearing a wire, could be the reason the FBI was building its case. I remember one Sunday in particular, late summer of 2012. We were all sitting around the dining room table, pasta and meatballs and sausage and peppers, wine flowing, everyone talking over each other. Vincent's younger brother, Paulie, made a toast. To family, he said, raising his glass. To loyalty, to always having each other's backs. Everyone drank, but I saw the way Vincent looked at Paulie, the suspicion in his eyes. Later, in the car on the way home, Vincent said, "I don't trust him anymore." Paulie? I was shocked. They'd been close their whole lives. Why? Vincent stared straight ahead at the road. He's been acting strange, nervous, asking too many questions. Either he's using again or he's talking to someone he shouldn't be talking to. You really think Paulie would rat? Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I think everyone has a breaking point, Ang. Everyone. And when the FBI offers you a deal, when they threaten you with life in prison or they threaten your family, people do things they never thought they'd do. I've seen it 100 times. Strong guys, tough guys, guys who swore they'd never talk. They all talk eventually. The paranoia spread through the crew like cancer. Meetings that used to happen in social clubs now happened in parks, in moving cars, in random diners in Queens at 3 in the morning. Conversations that used to be casual became coded. Numbers replaced names. Business became that thing. Money became packages. Murder became taking care of a problem. Everyone was suspicious of everyone. Friends stopped trusting friends. Brothers stopped trusting brothers. And Vincent, at the center of it all, stopped trusting anyone except me. That trust, that complete and total faith he had in me, became the heaviest burden I'd ever carried. Agent Morrison contacted me again in September. This time she didn't approach me in public. She left a note under my windshield wiper while I was at the grocery store. Just a phone number and 3 words, "When you're ready." I should have thrown it away. I should have told Vincent. Instead, I put it in my wallet, hidden behind my driver's license, and tried to pretend it didn't exist. But I knew it was there. Every time I opened my wallet, every time I paid for something, I felt that little piece of paper burning against my fingertips. It represented possibility. It represented escape. It represented betrayal. I called the number on a Wednesday morning in October while Vincent was out of town in Atlantic City for a meeting. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. Agent Morrison answered on the second ring. "Angela, I'm glad you called. I don't know why I'm calling," I said. "I don't have anything to tell you. I don't know anything about my husband's business. I'm not asking you to inform on your husband, Angela. I'm just asking you to meet with me. To talk. To hear what I have to say. That's all." There was a long pause. "One meeting. That's all I'm promising." "Okay," Agent Morrison said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Okay, where and when?" We met at a Starbucks in Park Slope, Far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew, but not so far that my absence would be suspicious. Agent Morrison was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. She smiled when she saw me. "Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't easy." I sat down across from her, my whole body tense, ready to run. "What do you want from me?" She slid one of the coffees across to me. "I want you to understand your situation. Vincent is going down, Angela. We have wiretaps, we have surveillance, we have witnesses. We're building a RICO case that's going to put him away for the rest of his life. That's not a threat, it's a fact. The question is, what happens to you when that happens?" I stared at the coffee, watching the steam rise. "I'm his wife. I don't know anything." "You're his wife," Agent Morrison agreed. "Which means you're vulnerable. When Vincent goes to prison, you lose everything. The house, the money, the protection. The government seizes assets in RICO cases. You'll be left with nothing. And the people Vincent did business with, the people he owes money to, the people he wronged, they'll come looking for revenge. You think being Vincent Russo's wife protects you? It makes you a target." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "So what are you offering me? Witness protection? A new identity? You want me to testify against my husband?" "I'm offering you a way out," Agent Morrison said. "I'm offering you a chance to take control of your own life. You don't have to testify. You don't have to wear a wire. We don't need you to build our case against Vincent. We already have that, but what you can do is cooperate. Tell us about the financial structure. Help us trace the money. In exchange, we'll protect you. We'll make sure you're safe when this all comes down. And we'll make sure you have something to start over with." I left that meeting without making any promises, but something had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I'd had a conversation about my future that didn't involve Vincent, didn't involve the life we'd built together. It felt like opening a window in a room that had been sealed shut. It felt like breathing, but it also felt like betrayal, because no matter how much I told myself I was just exploring options, no matter how much I rationalized it, I knew the truth. I was considering turning on my husband. I was considering breaking the most fundamental rule of the world I'd married into. And once you even consider that, once the idea takes root in your mind, you can never go back to who you were before. Vincent noticed something was different when he came home from Atlantic City. I could see it in the way he looked at me, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the questions that were really interrogations. "How was your week? What did you do? Who did you see?" I lied smoothly, telling him about errands and lunches with friends and hours spent reading in the garden. He seemed to accept it, but I felt the distance growing between us. Or maybe it had always been there and I was just noticing it for the first time. The breaking point came in November. Vincent's nephew, a kid named Marco who was maybe 22 years old, got arrested for assault outside a nightclub in Williamsburg. It should have been simple. Vincent had cops on the payroll, judges who owed him favors. Marco should have walked, but Marco panicked. In the interrogation room, scared and high and stupid, Marco started talking. He didn't mean to, or maybe he did, but he gave the cops information about a hijacking operation Vincent was running at JFK Airport. By the time Vincent's lawyer got to the precinct, the damage was done. Marco was released, and 2 days later, his body was found in an alley in Red Hook with 3 bullets in the back of his head. Vincent was quiet for a week after Marco's death. Not grieving quiet, but calculating quiet. He barely slept. He barely ate. He spent hours in his office with the door closed, making calls on burner phones, having whispered conversations with his most trusted guys. I knew what was happening. He was purging the organization, getting rid of anyone who might be weak, anyone who might talk. Polly disappeared for 3 days and came back looking 10 years older. 2 of Vincent's oldest friends stopped coming around. A captain named Sal who'd been with the family for 30 years suddenly moved to Florida without saying goodbye. Vincent was tightening the circle, trusting fewer and fewer people, and I could feel the noose tightening around my own neck too. One night in late November, Vincent came home at 2 in the morning and found me awake in the kitchen, drinking tea and trying to calm my nerves. He sat down across from me and took my hands in his. His hands were cold. "Angela," he said, and his voice was different, softer, almost vulnerable. "I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth." My heart stopped. He knew. Somehow, he knew about Agent Morrison. "Okay," I whispered. "Have the feds talked to you? Have they approached you? Have they tried to flip you?" I could have lied. I should have lied. But I was so tired of lying, so tired of being afraid, so tired of carrying secrets that were crushing me. "Yes," I said, "they approached me, twice, but I didn't tell them anything, Vincent. I swear to God, I didn't tell them anything." He was quiet for a long time, his thumbs rubbing circles on the backs of my hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. "What did they offer you?" "Protection, money, a way out, and you didn't take it?" "No." "Why not?" That question hung in the air between us. Why hadn't I taken it? Why was I still here, still in this house, still married to a man who killed people for a living? "Because I love you," I said, and it was true, even though I hated that it was true, even though loving him was destroying me. "Because you're my husband, because I took a vow." Vincent pulled me into his arms and held me so tightly I could barely breathe. I felt him shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry for bringing you into this. You deserved better. You deserved a normal life with a normal husband and kids and a house in the suburbs and none of this madness. But it's too late now. You know that, right? It's too late for both of us." I nodded against his chest, tears soaking into his shirt. "I know. They're coming for me, Ang. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but soon. And when they do, everything falls apart. The house, the money, everything we built. I need to know that you'll be okay. I need to know that you'll survive this." "I'll survive," I said, but I didn't believe it. I didn't know how to survive without him, even though he was the thing killing me. Agent Morrison called me the next day. I didn't recognize the number but I knew it was her. "We need to meet," she said without preamble. "It's urgent." "I can't," I started to say, but she cut me off. "Angela, listen to me very carefully. We're moving on Vincent within the next 72 hours. We have everything we need. Wiretaps, financial records, witness testimony. He's going to be arrested and charged with racketeering, extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. When that happens, your life as you know it ends. You need to decide, right now, which side of history you want to be on." I met her that afternoon in the parking lot of a shopping mall in Queens. She was in a dark sedan with tinted windows. I got in the passenger seat, my whole body shaking. 72 hours? I asked. She nodded. "We're executing warrants on Friday morning. Vincent, his top lieutenants, everyone in the organization. We've been building this case for 3 years. It's over. What happens to me? That depends on you," Agent Morrison said. "Right now, you're just the wife. We don't have evidence that you participated in any criminal activity. But if you help us, if you cooperate, we can make sure you're protected. We can make sure you have financial security. We can make sure you disappear if that's what you need." I gave her everything, not because I wanted to betray Vincent, but because I wanted to survive. I told her about the safety deposit box in Manhattan, the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, the cash hidden in the walls of our basement. I told her about the ledgers Vincent kept in a locked drawer in his office, the names and numbers and transactions that would connect him to decades of crime. I told her everything, and with every word, I felt a piece of my soul dying. When I was done, Agent Morrison handed me a card. "This is a direct line to me. When the arrests happen on Friday, call me immediately. We'll have agents ready to extract you. Pack a bag, essentials only. Be ready to move fast." I took the card and got out of the car and drove home in a daze, not quite believing what I'd just done. Vincent knew something was wrong the moment I walked through the door. He was in the kitchen, on the phone, and when he saw my face, he hung up without saying goodbye. "Where were you?" "Shopping," I said, but my voice was hollow. He walked toward me slowly, studying my face like he was trying to read a map. You're lying. You've been crying. What happened? Nothing happened. I'm just tired, Vincent. I'm tired of all of this. He cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. Did you talk to them again? Did you talk to the feds? I should have lied, but I was so empty, so exhausted, so done with all of it. Yes, he let go of me like I'd burned him, staggering backward. What did you tell them? Everything, I whispered. I told them everything. The look on his face was something I'll never forget. Not anger, not rage, but pure, absolute devastation. Like I'd reached into his chest and ripped out his heart. Why? He asked, and his voice broke. Why would you do that? Because I want to live, I said. Because I want a future. Because I'm tired of being afraid every single day. Because I can't do this anymore, Vincent. I can't. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand that you just signed my death warrant? When they arrest me, when I go to prison, the guys who think I talked, the guys who think I'm weak, they'll kill me. And if they don't kill me, I'll spend the rest of my life in a cage. Either way, I'm dead. And you did that. You did that to me. You did it to yourself, I said, and I was crying now too. You chose this life. You chose the violence and the crime and the lies. I didn't choose this. I fell in love with you and you dragged me into hell and you expected me to smile and play my part and never complain. Well, I'm done. I'm done playing. Vincent stood up, and for a moment, I thought he might hit me. But he didn't. He just looked at me with something like pity. You think the FBI is going to save you? You think they're going to protect you? Angela, you just became the biggest rat in New York. The moment word gets out that you cooperated, you're a target. My family, my crew, every mob in the city, they'll all want you dead. You can't run far enough. You can't hide well enough. You're dead too. You just don't know it yet. He left the house that night and didn't come back. I sat in the dark living room, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for Friday morning, waiting for it all to be over. I thought about calling Agent Morrison and telling her Vincent knew, telling her he might run, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. I'd already betrayed him once. I couldn't do it again. Some part of me still loved him. Some part of me always would. Friday morning came with rain, cold November rain that seemed fitting for the end of everything. I woke up at dawn to the sound of cars pulling up outside. I looked out the window and saw them, black SUVs with government plates, agents in FBI windbreakers, rain streaming down their faces. They knocked on the door, loud and insistent, and I opened it because there was nothing else to do. Angela Russo? Agent Morrison was there, flanked by half a dozen other agents. Yes, where's your husband? I don't know. He left last night. I haven't seen him since. She pushed past me into the house, agents fanning out to search every room. They were professional, efficient, tearing our life apart with gloved hands. I stood in the hallway and watched them carry out boxes of documents, computers, hard drives. Everything that documented Vincent's empire. They found him 3 hours later in his mother's basement in Bensonhurst, sitting in the dark with a gun in his lap. He didn't resist. He didn't fight. He just put his hands up and let them cuff him and lead him out to the waiting car. I saw it on the news that afternoon, footage of Vincent in handcuffs, his face blank, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. 37 other men were arrested that day, the entire leadership of the Russo crew. All of them charged under RICO statutes, all of them facing life in prison. The news called it the biggest mob bust in New York in 20 years. Agent Morrison came to the house that evening to check on me. You did the right thing, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't feel like I'd done the right thing. I felt like I'd destroyed everything I'd ever loved. We need to get you out of here, she continued. It's not safe. Word is already spreading about your cooperation. We have a safe house ready. We can move you tonight. I don't want to go into hiding, I said. I don't want witness protection or a new identity or any of that. I just want this to be over. It's not going to be over for a long time, Angela. Vincent's trial could take years. And even after he's convicted, you'll never be completely safe. You know too much. You've made too many enemies. I stayed in the house for 3 more weeks, packing up my life, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Vincent's lawyer came by once, delivering a handwritten letter from Vincent. I almost didn't open it. When I finally did, late one night with a glass of wine and rain hammering against the windows, his words cut through me like a knife. Angela, he wrote, I don't hate you. I should, but I don't. I understand why you did what you did. You were trying to survive. We were both just trying to survive. I loved you more than I've ever loved anyone, and that was my mistake. Love makes you weak in this world. It makes you vulnerable. I should have kept you at a distance. I should have protected you by keeping you away from all of this. Instead, I pulled you in close and now we're both paying the price. I don't blame you for what you did. I blame myself for loving you. Take care of yourself. Disappear. Build a new life. Forget you ever knew me. It's the only way you survive this. Vincent. I burned the letter in the fireplace and watched the paper turn to ash, watched 7 years of my life dissolve into smoke. The house sold quickly, seized by the government and auctioned off to pay Vincent's debts. I moved into a small apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey, across the river from Manhattan, far enough from Brooklyn to feel like a different world. I dyed my hair blonde. I started using my maiden name. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental office, answering phones and scheduling appointments and pretending to be a normal person with a normal past. Vincent's trial started in the spring of 2013. I didn't attend. I couldn't bear to see him in a courtroom. Couldn't bear to watch the prosecution lay out every crime, every murder, every betrayal. The media coverage was relentless. Every day brought new revelations, new evidence, new witnesses testifying about the empire Vincent had built and the violence he'd used to maintain it. He was convicted on all counts in August. 46 counts of racketeering, money laundering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I heard he was sent to a maximum security federal prison in Pennsylvania. I heard he was keeping to himself, not causing trouble, just serving his time quietly. I heard that 2 of his former associates tried to kill him in the yard but he survived, ended up in solitary confinement for his own protection. I heard a lot of things, but I didn't know what was true and what was rumor. I tried not to think about him locked in a cell for the rest of his life, tried not to imagine what his days were like. Tried not to calculate how much of his suffering was my fault. I saw Agent Morrison one last time, about a year after Vincent's conviction. She showed up at my apartment in Hoboken unannounced, looking tired and older than I remembered. "How are you doing?" she asked. I shrugged. "I'm alive, that's something. Have you had any trouble? Any threats?" "No, I think they've forgotten about me. Or maybe they've decided I'm not worth the trouble. I don't know." She nodded. "That's good, that's what we hoped for. You disappear into normal life and they move on to other things." "Is that why you're here? To check if I've successfully disappeared?" "Partly," she admitted, "and partly to apologize." "For what?" "For making you feel like you had to choose. I told you it was about survival, about doing the right thing, but the truth is, we needed your cooperation to make the case. We would have gotten Vincent eventually, but your information made it faster, cleaner, easier. I used you, and I'm sorry for that." I didn't know what to say. An apology didn't change anything. It didn't give me back my husband or my life or my peace of mind. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Cooperating?" I thought about it for a long time. "Every day," I said finally. "I regret marrying him. I regret falling in love with him. I regret believing that love could be enough. But cooperating? I don't know. I did what I had to do to survive. Maybe that makes me a rat. Maybe that makes me a coward. But I'm still here. I'm still breathing. And Vincent, for all his power and all his money and all his loyalty to his precious code, he's in a cage." So who really won? Agent Morrison left and I never saw her again. I stayed in Hoboken for another 2 years, working my receptionist job, living my quiet little life, going through the motions of existing. I didn't date, I didn't make friends, I didn't trust anyone enough to let them get close. I was a ghost, haunting my own life, waiting for something I couldn't name. In the winter of 2016, I got a phone call from Vincent's lawyer. Vincent had stage 4 lung cancer. He was dying. He had maybe 6 months left. He wanted to see me. The prison was allowing him compassionate visits from immediate family. You're still his wife, the lawyer said. Technically, you never filed for divorce. I know. Will you come? He's asking for you. He says he needs to see you before he dies. I should have said no. I should have hung up the phone and blocked the number and kept living my anonymous life. But I didn't, because some part of me needed to see him too. Needed closure, or answers, or maybe just needed to look into his eyes one more time. I drove to the prison on a gray February morning, showed my ID at the gate, submitted to the searches and the metal detectors and the suspicious looks from the guards. They led me through a maze of corridors to a small visiting room with a table and 2 chairs and a guard standing in the corner. And then they brought Vincent in. He was thin, so thin I barely recognized him. His skin was gray, his eyes were sunken, and he moved like every step hurt. But when he saw me, his face transformed. He smiled, that same smile that had made me fall in love with him 8 years ago. "Angela," he said, and his voice was hoarse but still his voice. "You came." We sat across from each other at that table, not touching, just looking. "You look good," he said. "Blonde suits you." I laughed, a sound that was half sob. "Don't lie, I look terrible." "We both do." "I'm dying," he said, like it was an interesting piece of news rather than a tragedy. "They gave me 6 months, but I think it's less. I can feel it eating me from the inside." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be. This is probably better than spending the next 40 years in here. At least this way, it ends." We talked for an hour, about nothing and everything. About the weather, about the food in prison, about the garden we used to have in Brooklyn and whether the new owners had kept the roses. We didn't talk about the trial. We didn't talk about my cooperation. We didn't talk about betrayal or love or regret. We just talked like 2 people who used to know each other, who used to share a life, who used to matter to each other. As the visit was ending, Vincent reached across the table and took my hand. The guard started forward, but Vincent glared at him and he stepped back. "I need you to know something," Vincent said. "I forgive you for talking to the FBI, for cooperating, for all of it. I forgive you." Tears streamed down my face. "I don't forgive myself. I know, but maybe someday you will. Maybe someday you'll understand that we were both just trying to survive in a world that was never going to let us be happy. You did what you had to do. And if I'd been in your position, I probably would have done the same thing." "I loved you," I said. "I know, I loved you too. That was our problem. We loved each other in a world where love is a weakness. Where love gets you killed." They took him away then, back to his cell, back to his death. I watched him walk away, his shoulders bent, his steps shuffling, nothing left of the powerful man he used to be. It was the last time I saw him. Vincent Russo died on April 19, 2016. The prison called to inform me. There was no funeral, no memorial service. His mother had died the year before. His brothers wanted nothing to do with him, blamed him for bringing down the whole organization. He was buried in a prison cemetery in Pennsylvania, just a numbered grave with no headstone, no flowers, no one to mourn him. I didn't cry when I got the news. I'd done all my crying already. I just sat in my apartment and felt the weight of everything finally lift off my shoulders. He was gone. The man I'd loved and betrayed and destroyed was gone. And I was still here. Still alive. Still breathing. Still trying to figure out what survival meant. That was 8 years ago. I'm 41 now. I still live in New Jersey, though I've moved to a different town, a smaller place where nobody knows me and nobody asks questions. I changed my name legally, became someone new on paper. I work at a library now, shelving books and helping patrons and losing myself in other people's stories. I've never remarried. I've never even dated seriously. How do you trust someone again after what I've been through? How do you let someone in when you know what love can do? Sometimes I dream about Vincent. Not the sick, dying man I saw in that prison visiting room, but the young man who danced with me at my cousin's wedding, who made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, who promised to protect me and take care of me forever. In those dreams, we're happy. We're normal. He's not a gangster and I'm not a rat, and we're just two people who fell in love and built a life together. And then I wake up and remember the truth. Remember the violence and the fear and the FBI and the betrayal. Remember that the man I loved was also a monster. Remember that I destroyed him to save myself. Remember that there are no happy endings in the life we chose. The other wives from that world, the ones whose husbands went to prison or died or disappeared, they all hate me. I know because I've heard through the grapevine, through distant cousins and old acquaintances who still have ties to Brooklyn. I'm the woman who broke the code. The woman who chose survival over loyalty. The woman who put her husband in prison and walked away. They call me a rat, a traitor, a whore. They say I deserve whatever comes to me. Maybe they're right, maybe I do. But here's what I know now, what I learned the hard way, what cost me everything to understand. The Mafia doesn't take care of its own. Family isn't everything. Blood doesn't protect you. All those rules, all that loyalty, all that honor among thieves, it's a lie. A beautiful, seductive lie that traps you and uses you and destroys you. Women in that world, we're possessions. We're status symbols. We're the mothers of the next generation of criminals. But we're not people. We're not allowed to have our own thoughts or dreams or desires. We exist to serve and support and stay silent. I broke the silence. I chose myself over the code. And maybe that makes me a traitor. But it also makes me free. Free from the fear, free from the violence, free from the weight of secrets that were never mine to carry. I paid a terrible price for that freedom. I lost the man I loved. I lost my family. I lost any chance at a normal life. But I survived. And in that world, survival is the only victory that matters. I think about Vincent sometimes, lying in that unmarked grave in Pennsylvania. I think about whether he really forgave me or if that was just something he said to give me peace. I think about all the lives he destroyed, all the people he hurt, all the choices he made that led us both to ruin. And I think about the girl I used to be, the 23-year-old paralegal who danced with a handsome stranger at a wedding and thought she'd found her fairy tale. That girl is gone. She died somewhere between the first time I heard screaming in my basement and the moment I told the FBI everything. What's left is this: a woman alone in a quiet town, living a quiet life, carrying quiet ghosts. I don't tell this story to justify what I did. I don't tell it to seek forgiveness or understanding. I tell it because it's the truth. The truth about what it means to love a monster. The truth about what it takes to survive when survival means betraying everyone you love. The truth about the price of freedom when you're bought and sold by silence. Vincent trusted me with his life, trusted me with his secrets, trusted me to keep the code. And I broke that trust because breaking it was the only way to break free. He was right about one thing. Love made us both weak. Love destroyed us both. He's dead and I'm alive, but we're both gone. The people we were when we fell in love, when we believed we could have it all, when we thought our story would have a different ending. Those people don't exist anymore. All that's left is the memory of what we lost and the knowledge that in that world, in the world of shadows and secrets and blood, there's no such thing as winning. There's only degrees of losing. And the woman who walks away, the woman who survives, she loses most of all. Because she has to live with what she's done. She has to wake up every morning and look in the mirror and see the face of someone who chose herself over love, who chose freedom over loyalty, who chose to breathe over belonging. That's my life now. That's what I bought with Vincent's life. And on the nights when I can't sleep, when the guilt claws at my throat and the memories won't let me rest, I ask myself if it was worth it. I never have an answer. I just wait for morning. And I survive another day.